Does it look like the October dates are going to happen for you now? Has that changed since you guys moved everything to October?
I have no idea.
Yeah, right.
Initially, I thought this was going to be like a 2-week thing, and then we'd all be back working again.
Yeah.
And I just, who knows? I hope so. I'm not going to have any hesitations about going back on the road unless things get really bad. But it's just impossible to tell at the moment.
Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of Bus Call. This is an excerpt from an interview I did with David Hooper over at Music Business Radio and Lightning 100 back in July. Keep in mind, we weren't sure what was going to happen with the pandemic over the fall and winter. There's obviously a lot that has changed, and I was way wrong on a lot of things that I thought were going to happen here. But it is a pretty interesting conversation that I had with David. If you guys like the podcast, please do us a favor and rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Share with some friends, text somebody, and visit us at show-logistics.com/podcast, where you can pick up a shirt and listen to your favorite episode of Bus Call. Without any further ado, here's my interview with David Hooper on Music Business Radio.
It's Music Business Radio, special COVID-19 coronavirus edition. I'm David Hooper, coming to you from my closet in South Nashville. Engineer Stephanie and I have been doing several conversations with artists and other personnel who have been affected by COVID-19. This next one, a conversation I had with Ryan Goldbacher. He's the tour manager for Sebastian Bach. You probably remember Sebastian from the band Skid Row. He's been on the road ever since he's been in Skid Row until it came to a complete stop because of COVID-19. We talk about that, how he's doing his meet and greets, what he's going to do after this is all over. There's my conversation with Ryan Goldbacher on Music Business Radio. Sebastian Bach, 30 straight years of touring, at least. Do you have a same or similar story?
My story begins, I guess, I moved to Nashville to be an audio engineer in the studio, and I was never really like a creative guy. I couldn't write a song. I would say, a mediocre guitar player. By Nashville standards, a pretty terrible guitar player. But, the technical side of things was always what I was interested in. And I kind of realized quick when I got to Nashville, all the big studios where I would have been able to get a job were kind of shutting down because everybody was doing it themselves on their laptop and stuff like that. So I kind of slowly slid into the live sound thing just because there was money to be made there. Not a lot of money, but, enough to support myself. And, initially, I really just wanted to do audio for bands, and I kind of learned that just by doing it. And eventually, I was an audio engineer at SIR in Nashville.
Yeah.
And Shooter Jennings' manager came in one day. He was working with the band Evanescence, and they were doing a thing there. And we kind of met each other in passing. And to make a long story short, eventually I ended up emailing him about a gig that he had posted on a website. And, we got back to each other, and he was like, well, we want you to do audio, but can you do the tour managing thing too? And I had no idea. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, yeah, of course I can tour manage, just booking flights and doing schedules and stuff like that. So
yeah, sounds easy.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. And then, I ended up doing it, and I had my ass handed to me there. But yeah, that's the nuts and bolts of how I got into the tour managing side of things. The audio was kind of, since high school, I was into that. But
and has your life since then been just one series of tours after the other with different artists, with the same artists?
It's been different artists. The thing is, when you're starting out in this business, you go for who, you'll do a tour, and then nobody knows who you are, so you might have 3 months off or something like that, and then you do another one, and it just kind of builds from that. So like my first real, I had done a bunch of bands, and I actually did some theater stuff before I did Shooter, but Shooter was like my first real tour. After that, I ended up working with Jared Neiman, a guy named Greg Bates, and a couple other country acts, and just kind of led to doing more rock stuff, and then eventually Sebastian and Samantha Fish.
So Sebastian is one of those guys. When I think of him, a legendary frontman, I think would be a good way to talk about him. He's on the road constantly. He's one of those guys I feel like he's going to die with his boots on.
Yeah, he lives for the road. He's a road dog like us, and he's just that's his life. That's what he loves. He's and it's not an act on stage. That's what he loves to do, and he's one of the best in the world.
So what was that like? Because at the beginning of the year, you've got this tour set up, or you're already on the road because he's constantly touring, and everything just shuts down. How did that come to be?
Well, I mean, there was in the background, you're hearing about the coronavirus kind of spreading around the world, and nobody's, you're taking it seriously, but nobody's like, oh, it'll never end up over here. It's not as big of a deal as we think. And I remember what happened was we had just done a cruise of all things to do, and we come back and we literally get back that day, and then something happened, and Sebastian ended up filling in for somebody somewhere in Mexico. And I started getting like texts from the band and from people around me. He's like, hey, Sebastian's going to get stuck in Mexico. Sebastian's going to get stuck in Mexico. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And, I know he's not going to get stuck in Mexico, but I go to management and I'm like, hey, are they going to cancel this tour? This is kind of ridiculous. And initially I was pissed because they were like, oh, we're not sure. I'm like, man, they canceled this tour over this stupid stuff. I'm going to be furious. And then, 2-3 days go by and you start realizing, hey, this is a lot more serious than I thought. And literally, I mean, we had all the flights booked. We had all the rehearsals booked. Everything was ready to go. And I think about 2 or 3 days before I'm supposed to step on a plane, I get a call from management and he's like, hey, so here's the deal. You tell the crew guys, I'm going to tell the band, and, the tour is postponed until hopefully October, and we'll see what happens then. So.
Yeah, it's been interesting to me to see how people pivot and how quickly things have been rearranged. Does it look like the October dates are going to happen for you now? Has that changed since you guys moved everything to October?
I have no idea.
Yeah, right.
Initially, I thought this was going to be like a 2-week thing, and then we'd all be back working again.
Yeah.
And I just, who knows? I hope so. I'm not going to have any hesitations about going back on the road unless things get really bad. But it's just impossible to tell at the moment.
Are you worried about that? About your safety, the crew's safety, the public safety?
Yes, to a really big extent, actually, because as a tour manager, you're the leader, and you kind of got to make sure if somebody gets sick, number one, they get sick, and number two, you're down a person, and it can really wreak havoc.
Yeah.
But the way this thing spreads, you could be down 2-3 people really, really quick.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't really know. I don't have a plan at the moment. But I'd probably just kind of stick with like the CDC guidelines and probably change how we do our meet and greets and how we interact with everybody, in the venue.
I'm curious about the show, Ryan, because Sebastian Bach, I watched all the videos just reminiscing about him before you were on the episode today. And he's playing these clubs and they are just packed full of people. Have you thought about what the shows themselves might look like? Would that be any different?
I don't know at this point. I mean, that's going to be a discussion that we got when we, probably, end of August, September, when we start kind of planning the thing. I really don't know what that's going to entail. It's probably going to be more up to the venue and the city and the state, as far as capacity goes.
Right.
The way I kind of understand it, and, everything changes every day, but they're going to probably book bigger rooms than normal and just kind of keep people socially distant and, maybe do a little more streaming and stuff like that. So
have you guys done a lot of streaming?
I think we did streaming one time when we did a show in Punta Cana, but no, not really. Not too much of that.
Are you guys looking at it? I know a lot of people seem to have made a really quick pivot to that. But at the same time, I understand with a show like his, I mean, his is so intense and it's this like collective consciousness of people. So
yeah, well, he does a good job at playing to that. Like if there's the one we did in Punta Cana is on YouTube, and if you can check that out. But personally, I've made the pivot because everything I did got canceled too, and I was like, well, you know what, I'm going to figure out how to do the streaming thing, and keep myself busy, and that's been pretty good for me. So it's I think that's going to be a way of life for at least the next couple of years. And, if it works out well, which I think it will, it might be a thing that people end up doing, indefinitely. So
Sebastian Bach, I don't know if this is common knowledge, Canadian artist though.
He's got tri-citizenship. He was born in the Bahamas, grew up in Canada, and, he's a citizen of the United States right now.
So what has this been like for you or the band? Because as you mentioned, he's a road dog, man. You are too. And for that to come to a screeching halt, the mental element of that it's got to be, something to work around, I would think.
Initially it was for me, and then I was just like, you know what, I'm going to keep myself as busy as I possibly can. And that's when because I had started my podcast, Bus Call, about a year ago, but I wasn't really diving into it. And, I was like, well, all right, it's obvious we're not going to be touring for a while. Let me keep myself busy. There's a lot of people that were going to be on the road that are not now, that are going to be willing to talk about things.
Right.
And, it's just a matter of taking your skills and applying them to something else. For me, it was that, and it was, all right, well, there's some overlap when it comes to streaming stuff here. So I'm going to learn everything I can that I don't already know about streaming, and, just keep your mind busy. There's always something to do that's going to be production related or logistically related. And, that's how I've kept myself sane. I know our guitar player, Brent Woods, has been working on a lot of records and stuff like that. Sebastian, he's just super busy on social media. I know he's working on some new songs, and he's building his recording studio, the Drum Hut, in his backyard. So, he's not nobody's sitting on their butts and doing nothing. We're all keeping busy and trying to be as productive as we can.
Well, I love it that you mentioned podcasting. And it seems like such a great opportunity right now for musicians who would want to start a podcast to keep in touch with an audience that they can't get to physically. And it's a very intimate thing to do too. It's like a tour diary, almost like a Corona diary you could do.
Yeah. Because, I think in the first one, we talk about how this isn't going to last that long. And obviously, it's going to last a little while. And, now I'm like, who knows? But you look back at it, and it's just interesting, the kind of stuff how you've grown just even in the past couple months.
Well, that's the thing that's been great on this episode and the other things that we've done that have been COVID-19 related, to see how the industry as a whole and its individuals within that industry are pivoting, and they're finding new ways, just like we did in the music industry when technology came around. But we found a way to work with Spotify. Great. It's even bigger than it would have been without it.
The technology thing and the pivoting thing is going to be a big thing in the future. Because that's even, I don't know if you've seen that memo that Rolling Stone published about that Live Nation is going to be, doing a lot more streaming and stuff like that. But that's going to be a new avenue and a new source of revenue for artists as this goes on. And even after this is all over, I think it's going to become a good opportunity for people to just kind of do some stuff on the side, between tours. You can do a show all of a sudden. So.
Or some people don't like to tour. They just don't.
They don't
like
want to tour anymore. Exactly. They just want to, go into the rehearsal space and play a show, and that's it. Yeah.
I want to finish this off talking about your podcast. Until we can get you back face to face in the Music Business Radio studios, do a full episode with you, people can hear more from you and keep in touch with what you're doing via your podcast. So talk about that for a second.
So the podcast is dedicated to all the industry people that are in the touring side of things. I kind of see it as an opportunity for people that are looking to get into the business to kind of understand the paths that they can take, because there's a lot of things that just aren't, the glamorous roles in the music industry are the ones you see on stage. The other opportunities that are there are kind of hidden from people on the professional side. They just don't know that these things exist. But yeah, it's a good listen, because you kind of learn the ins and outs of what happens on the road and the jobs that you had no clue existed. So
yeah, well, I love that. It's very similar to Music Business Radio. So if you're listening to this, you're going to like it. And where can people find you?
If they go to show-logistics.com/buscall, all one word, that's the main landing page, and they can find me on any podcasting platform. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, just about everything else that's out there.
Hey, it's David checking in with you from my closet in South Nashville, joined from her kitchen in South Nashville, Stephanie Lesher, recording engineer extraordinaire. We've been doing these interviews. It's been a few weeks, right, Stephanie?
Yep, we've been collecting them over the past, probably 6 weeks now.
And we have more to come. Thank you for listening, Stephanie. Thanks for all the work that you've done on this.
Of course, and don't forget, you can listen to all of our episodes at lightning100.com/musicbusinessradio or musicbusinessradio.com.
Thanks for listening. Keep your head up. We're going to get through this, and we'll see you on the next episode of Music Business Radio.
Lexi!
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to Bus Call. If you like the podcast, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit us at patreon.com/buscall. Patreon members will get the podcast a week before it's released to the public, and they can also sign up to have advance notice of who's going to be on and the opportunity to ask questions. Please take some time to visit show-logistics.com. We've dedicated the first page to sell merch to raise money for Crew Nation's Global Relief Fund. As you know, with COVID-19, basically all touring has stopped for the foreseeable future, and there's thousands and thousands of crew out of work, and we're donating all the profits, many of the merch sold there, straight to Crew Nation. Thanks so much again, and please rate, review, and subscribe. I know this could be a hot button topic, but I want to encourage everybody out there, please, just wear a mask. Just a little bit longer. We're almost there. Just a few more months of this. I've got people that have lost more than you would believe over this, and just because it's not affecting you doesn't mean it's not affecting somebody that you interact with on a day-to-day basis.